So I was interested in talking about the idea of hell. I guess I am in a situation where, despite being able to explain what I dislike about, say, Moses, Exodus 31, or things Yeshua, Jesus said, or Paul, that I still have a belief in what one might call El Allah, Yahweh, so on. And so while I may reason myself to the idea that I won't go to hell, I have an active belief that I seem to not be able to comfortably get out of, that I will experience hell. Kind of an uncomfortable position.
What makes you think there's a hell?
I'm not completely confident. If one interprets certain sections of the Bible in specific ways, it seems like there is, but I'm guessing it's mostly indoctrination. But I also seem to have this idea of hell as if I perceived it at some point, even though rationally I probably didn't.
Okay. Trying to think of an alternative example here. Do you watch scary movies much?
I'm not a big fan.
Oh. Or, I mean, I don't know, anything like The Twilight Zone or Black Mirror, any kind of sort of speculative fiction?
I'm familiar with them well enough, whether I watch them or not.
I mean, the thing about hell is that it is a story that people tell each other very sincerely in a lot of different parts of society, but it's only one of many, many creepy, scary stories that we tell each other as a culture. And I wonder if maybe getting more into scary movies and thinking about more possible things that could happen. I know this doesn't sound like it's very comforting, but it might put in perspective how great the human imagination is, because I think that one reason people enjoy watching horror movies is because it's kind of cathartic to feel scared for a while, and then the movie ends and you realize that it's just a story people were telling.
Yeah, I think for Michi, just thinking about my experience when I was a believer, even after I went, called myself spiritual but not religious, kind of leaving the actual Baptist name Christian behind it, just going with that general spiritual route. This is before I actually progressed to non-belief in a deity at all. I still held on to that fear, kind of like what you're saying, that uncomfortable feeling that, if I do bad still, if I, steal or kill or whatever else, that I'll still be subject to this punishment of hell. And that stuck with me for years on that side. And so it wasn't until years later, even after I'd moved down to San Antonio, even after that, it was kind of realizing that I was focusing on this one particular version of hell. And the reason that I still had a hold on me, so to speak, is because I was taught this, from my early childhood, that this would be the result of what would happen to you if you disobeyed God or Jesus. Depending on what age it was taught in different ways. But I remember in one of the churches that I grew up in, they had a large poster on the wall, very large, maybe 5 or 6 feet tall, and it was the Lake of Fire poster. And it had all of the different ways that you could be put into this lake of fire. And that imagery of, it wasn't showing people, it was just showing words that, submerged within the flames that were on this poster. And that was my idea of hell. And if I did any of these things, then this is what I would be subject to. But after I came to realize that, going through my transition out of belief altogether as to why I was holding on to, Christianity or, only calling myself Baptist as opposed to the thousands of other religions that have been proposed, it eventually came, as I was thinking about it, like the fear of hell, the heaven or hell question. It kind of went along the same lines of saying, why was I focusing on this one religion's aspect? So I was focused on this one religion's afterlife and the consequences and the qualifications to get into heaven and hell. Why was I focusing on just this when there's been so many other afterlives proposed by other religions? I wasn't scared of what happens in the Norse mythology or the Greek mythology as far as their underworlds were concerned. And so it kind of logically followed for me, at least at that time, why would I be afraid of this if the evidence for this hell that I grew up believing and was taught to fear, the same amount of evidence I have for that is the same amount of evidence I have for other afterlives that other religions have proposed, which is none. And so that's how I kind of started easing out of that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I do understand that. And again, that type of thing is what allows me to get to the point of reasoning that even if I have a belief that I seem to be unable to not have, that it probably isn't correct. But, and while I may have this idea that I have perceived hell, I'm also quite confident that Aaron Ra would believe he has perceived things equally or more vivid, and he concluded that they cannot be true and was able to lose that belief. But I'm guessing neither one of you would be able to think other than what you were just describing, separate from that, rather.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, it's one thing to understand a thing intellectually, but what you're talking about is it sounds like you recognize and acknowledge that what you have is probably some kind of psychological hang-up. And getting over a psychological hang-up, I mean, neither of us is qualified to really give advice on that. Maybe you could consider calling the hotline project that we just mentioned when Daryl Ray was on. Or maybe you might want to take it up with a counselor. Or maybe watching horror movies would put things in perspective for you. There are a lot of ways to get through them, and I don't know if we can give fully qualified advice on how to not be scared of something that you already basically know isn't true.
Right, because I mean, everyone is unique, and so
but that's not. That's. I'm sorry, but that's not quite what I was meaning to say. It's not that I believe it's not true. Mm-hmm. It's that I understand that if I was a more reasonable person, I probably would believe it's not true. But I do still have the sense of presence, the active belief, and I don't think that if I die, as much as I might prefer this, that I will stop. I would prefer to believe that I am a pattern generated by my brain and that once the pattern in the brain stops, I stop. But I do still, in fact, have the belief. It's not that I don't believe it, but I'm just afraid still. And so I think I was hoping to use Matt as kind of like a neurological hack that he could explain with these things able to be cited in the Greek and
Trust
the Hebrew.
me when I say that Matt isn't a licensed psychologist either.
No, not psychologist, but that he would be able to make a statement on why hell, even from a biblical perspective, probably isn't the way I view it. But I'm guessing from the way
I can do that for you. But if you already feel like a more reasonable person would already understand it, then I don't know that a better argument is what you need. Although if you think that you're not reasonable enough to accept the things that your intellect is telling you, then maybe what you need to do, assuming that you would like to be a more reasonable person, is read more and learn more about, for instance, how the human brain works, or where religion came from historically. I think there are a lot of good books. Didn't Daryl Ray actually mention that he had a book, The God Virus?
Yes.
But that's one of a lot of different books. I mean, I'm not hoping to change your mind on something of this magnitude in the course of like a 10 or 15 minute call. I think that you should use this maybe as a jumping off point to learn and understand why hell became a part of the culture instead, because there really is no reason to take the concept of hell seriously. All right? I mean, there isn't any evidence for hell. There isn't something. I mean, even a lot of the features that we attribute to hell in modern times weren't even in the Bible at any point. A lot of them just came from sources like Dante's Inferno, where he straight up made stuff up. Or things that Christians will tell each other about the rapture came from like writings in the 1800s.
As I understand it, a lot of it came from the Apocalypse of Peter, but would Matt probably say that outside of the Apocalypse of Peter in the canon, there probably is no real foundation for hell in the New or Old Testament?
I can't tell you what Matt would say. He's not here.
Yeah.
Okay, because it seems like there is, but I don't know. Okay, but just from the way you were going through that, is there probably not time to get onto the morality question? That was my second thing.
You can ask it and we can give a couple more minutes, but we're going to move on to other callers pretty soon. If you think this needs to be a longer call, then you can try again another week.
Okay, do you know who the hosts are for next week?
No.
No, I don't.
Okay, I apologize.
All right, you can check our website, atheist-experience.com.
Okay, I understand. I apologize. Thank you for taking the call.
Okay,
no problem.
Thanks for calling.